It's a secret, but it's an open secret. It's plain to all, but only a few see and understand. Then don't you understand this parable? Then how will you understand any parable? It's a secret, but it's an open secret. It's plain to all, but only a few see and understand. Then Jesus said to them, don't you understand this parable? Then how will you understand any parable?
Understand this parable? Then how will you understand any parables?
It's a secret, but it's an open secret. It's plain to all, but only a few see and understand. Then don't you understand this parable? Then how will you understand any parables? It's a secret, but it's an open secret. It's plain to all, but only a few see and understand. Then Jesus said to them, don't you understand this parable? Then how will you understand any parables?
here we are. Here we are, for better or for worse. Here we are, folks. Here we are. And here we go. Definitely wanted to stream today, but I don't really have much of a topic, I will say. Uh-oh, look who it is. It's the man, the myth, the legend.
From the top rope.
Raphael Pilotson. What's good, brother?
Not too much. How you doing, McBo?
I'm all right. I was just about to say my dog refused to come inside today for me to stream, so I got to keep one ear on the back door to see if he kind of starts acting the fool. Actually, I should open my window here so that I can actually hear in case he starts barking out that way too. But you may be able to hear my AC, because my window is right above the outdoor AC unit. So unfortunately, yeah. So I might have to go on my mobile device at some point and step away. But my plan for the day, open to suggestion now that you're here. But my plan was actually going to be to start a underground guerrilla marketing campaign in the corner to try to envelop my friend into it. And he's not that close of a friend. It's been a while since we chatted. And he's also probably one of my higher status friends.
Okay.
So, take that for what it's worth. Like he's been interviewed by Christianity Today or whatever. But after listening to all of the conference streams, the themes of pain, grief, relational difficulties were all seemingly front of mind, and especially after Michael Martin's talk, that was following Rafe's as well. But just the general timbre, the emotional timbre of the talk so far has been, I think basically I was reminded of my friend who's a writer and has written these great books. And the latest one is How to Stay Married. His name's Harrison Scott Key. So if no one had joined, I was just going to put up the interview of Christianity Today with my friend Harrison. And
I'm good if you want to still do that, and we can use that as a launching point.
Yeah, actually, maybe I'll pull that up. But why did you hop on, sir? What good news did you want to bring to the people, or were you just trying to chill?
Just trying to chill, I think. Like, one of the things that I got to do while I was over at the Northwestern Conference was talk with Mr. Foxman quite a bit. Excuse me, President Foxman.
Mr. President Foxman.
Mr. President Foxman. Because I've had an inkling of like wanting to try and make content and try and put it out there. And I've definitely had a couple of weekends where it's like, you know what, maybe I should try and turn on a stream. And it's like, I don't know. I'm just going to be sitting there by myself playing a video game that nobody wants to watch. People will pop in and be like, oh, freaking Dwarf Fortress? Absolutely not. And click away again. And it's like, I haven't played Dwarf Fortress in a long time, but that was the one that my brothers specifically went out and bought Oblivion for me to play instead of Dwarf Fortress because they love watching me play video games and they could not stand watching me play that one. So, yeah.
Yeah, I have definitely in my life been more of a video game watcher than a player. I'm pretty good at I used to be good at 2K. I can't afford to like buy the new one at this point in my life, but that's just not something that money is really going to be going towards. But I imagine if I'm running the triple option, I know how to read a defense and stuff like that. So I'm better than average in like real life sports games. Not good at racing games, not that good at fighting games, not that good at shooting games. I'm not bad at like strategy and puzzle games. Like I'll tear up. My favorite game right now is probably the Battle of Polytopia. It's a mobile game. I got hooked onto it from Lex Friedman and Elon Musk. But it's basically like a combination of chess and Civ. And it's just, I think that they nailed the kind of addiction loop, but also kind of actual brain, I mean, chess has an addiction loop as well. So it kind of strikes that balance of I don't know. Maybe it's also just self-justification. Who knows?
Might be. Do you mind if I ask what elo chess you are, or what chess?
Oh no, I don't. I don't remember my elo. I don't play enough to really have an elo. I think.
Okay.
Yeah, I wouldn't. If whatever the number 1200 is coming up for me, but that was also that might be another type of test that I'm remembering instead of the elo or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So, and forgive me, I'm actually pulling up the interview from the homie as
You
we
started
speak.
the stream without being prepared. How could you?
Yeah, well, I was trying to get my dog to come inside. Tayo, what's the Bethel McGrew test? You know, is that just like the test of her approval? Because I do not work for the approval of man, let alone a spicy little Catholic lady.
Also, the other thing that caught me that was like, oh, maybe I should come on stream is the fact that you've left the subliminal messaging up. I'm like, oh, I don't know if that's him calling me out, but it's like, okay, you know what? Why not? Just,
what was the subliminal messaging that you saw?
No. Well,
I just left it up because you were right.
Oh, so specifically the text that you had in like the bottom center frame.
Yeah,
I'm guessing it was from something. I don't know what it was from.
Yeah, it was from a documentary on a monastery somewhere.
Okay.
Yeah, but it was just perfect. It was like exactly because I just whenever I see something that sparks my attention that could be a good Grim Grizz branding, I usually steal it.
Mm-hmm.
But then I made that one and I already had the beat that sampled PVK, and I was like, this isn't really a Grim Grizz thing. This is more of a McMo thing. So I just kind of ended up posting that video on my channel, and then it became my my intro. I was going to put it on the album I'm working on, but I decided against it because I just heard it so many times already. And I was like, you know what? I don't want to get in trouble down the road if I release that on streaming services for them to like basically sue me for my own royalties, as small as they are. But yeah, so okay, so apparently the beef that Bethel McGrew has is more so with Christianity Today than it is with because I was like, I don't even think you know enough about this guy to say whether he'd pass the test. But yeah, apparently if association with Christianity Today is the oh man, what's that called in politics? It's the they talk about it for like basically it sets the bounds of acceptable speech. What is that called?
The Overton window. Yep.
Overton window. I saw Overcooked is Good by Cassandra, and it made me remember. It's the Overton window. Yeah, I don't think Bethel McGrew is necessarily setting the Overton window for the TLC with her hatred of Christianity Today. But who am I to judge? I don't set the Overton window at all either. But it does take a little bit of social awareness to understand the Overton window so that one may make jokes at the borders and not overly offend nor make people roll their eyes too often. So okay, what do we got in the comments here? Overcooked is good. Is that a game? Overcooked?
I'm assuming so. I know Cooking Mama 2 only because my wife is a huge fan of what's her name? She draws animation stuff on YouTube all the time. She did Scribble Showdown. Jaden Animations. There we go.
Yeah, this is a part of nerd YouTube that I am not a part of.
That's probably for the best.
So Cooking Mama 2, that's a game?
That's a game. I want to say it's a DS game where you have to do certain things to like mix this and then stamp these precisely, and then you get graded based off of how well you make the recipe.
That reminds me of that like dog game on Nintendo DS where you had to take care of the dogs. My sister had that, and I was always trying to steal her DS to play it. When Tayo originally said this, maybe Cooking Mama 2, I thought he was saying he was so good at FIFA that even his own mother could catch that smoke.
Nope. Well, I mean, if you're going to be bragging about that, then your mom's got to be pretty good at FIFA as well.
Yeah, that was my next question is like, how good is his mom? But then you said you were decent at Cooking Mama 2, or your wife played it. So I was like, oh, that must be a game. So, all right, I'm pulling up this interview. Let's see. What's the best way to do this? I think it's just because I can either share it like through my system's audio or I can share it the way that StreamYard wants me to do things, which I think I'm going to do it the way StreamYard wants me to do things, but I might have to switch it when I come back.
Okay.
And then I will have my phone, so if you want me to pause it, just let me know.
Sounds good.
Okay, share tab video. And we'll start from the beginning. Oh, no. Don't listen to that music. Probably.
I asked him to read one of my favorite.
Copyright strike. Copyright strike.
Kneeling, an illicit flirtation of body.
Okay.
Joined by Harrison Scott Key. Harrison Scott Key is the author of the memoirs Congratulations, Who Are You Again? And The World's Largest Man. His newest book is called How to Stay Married. It's the story of his marriage during a time of crisis. It's a book about faith and a book about pain. It's deeply funny and deeply tragic. I asked him to read one of my favorite passages before we dug into the conversation, a moment where, in the midst of this time of crisis, he visits a men's prayer breakfast.
The praying shall commence, brothers, if everyone could take a knee. Kneeling, an illicit flirtation of body with spirit, is supposed to be an affront to good Presbyterians, who typically prefer a safety-first worship environment, hands to yourself, no sudden movements. I'd never seen any proclivity to popish kneeling at this church, so it was quite astonishing to see all these dreary men descend to the floor. Before I could even disappear the last plug of sausage from its fatty puddle, the place looked like a classroom in an earthquake drill, chairs in disarray, everybody hiding under tables. I pushed back my chair as Hugh, hiding on the floor behind the lectern, invited us to take various prayer assignations. Roger would pray for this, Eddie for that, etc. Voices called out from under the furniture as though trapped under rubble. I sank to the floor to this unpadded carpet and wished I'd worn sweatpants. I had just eaten enough delicious breakfast meat to fill a schooner, and now my khakis conformed to my gut with the devotion of a danskin leotard. I bowed down to God the Maker in my tight pants, eyes closed, and remembered my seasonal vertigo, which causes me to fall over unless my body is lashed to a post. To right myself, I grabbed the chair, setting my elbows down on its cushion, hooking my hands into the curlicue struts of its back, a perfectly comfortable position. It looked as though I were now making love to the furniture. I'd been to Episcopalian churches where they knelt so much it'd make a man keep Dramamine handy. Looking around, I saw 2 or 3 older men, incapable of kneeling, who'd thrown themselves prostrate over their plates. I thought some of them might be sleeping. I thought 1 or 2 might be dead. Being dead would have been an improvement.
All right, Harrison Scott Key, welcome to the bulletin.
Thank you for having me on.
So I always like to hear authors frame up their own projects in their own words. So imagine you're standing in a line, waiting for a coffee order to come in. Somebody starts chatting you up and says, "Okay, what's your book about? How to Stay Married? What's your book about?" To the extent that the title doesn't tell us everything.
Sure. The best, shortest way to describe it is it's a little bit like A Pilgrim's Progress, but written by Larry David and Jerry Seinfeld. That's a good short way.
That's good. Yeah, as a deep Larry David fan, I appreciate that. We're going to talk about the book quite a bit and get into some of the weeds here. So I think people who are fans of yours that want to sort of avoid all spoilers probably should read the book and come back. And yet, with the title being How to Stay Married, I don't think it'll be a surprise to anyone to say this is a book about the struggle of a marriage. It opens with your wife coming to you to talk about wanting to end your marriage. And the book's, like all of your work, is really funny. It's very vulnerable. But this was a deeply painful book to read in a lot of ways. It was interesting to me as well. Like, your work often doesn't paint you in a positive light. Like, you're self-deprecating.
There we go.
Sorry, I realized I couldn't pause the video from my phone. I could only remove it. And so
Oh no.
I had to run back. You're good. I probably shouldn't have streamed, but such is life.
That's part of the charm of these things, is like it doesn't have to be perfect.
Exactly. If I can do it, anyone can.
Mm-hmm. So 2 notes from the start of this. One, I don't know if there is an intent behind it, but the little audio markers in the bottom right, I'm assuming that those are supposed to be like splitting apart from each other, or maybe it's like a left-right audio channel thing, but they're not doing it correctly. Like it's like the first half of the bottom one, or like the first like 1/8 of the bottom one is moving correctly, and then the rest of it's just static, and it's like what?
Let's see, hold on.
David fan, I appreciate that. We're going to talk about the book quite a bit and get
like it's matching the one on the top.
People who are fans of yours that want to sort of avoid all spoilers probably should read the book and come back. And yet, with the title being How to Stay Married, I don't think it'll be a surprise.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Yeah, like what the heck is that?
It opens with your wife coming to you to talk about wanting to end your marriage.
And I am ever the critic.
Like all of your work is really fun.
I'm ever the critic, so I'm just going to throw this out there.
It sounds... Well, I would have said, well, just before we leave the weird design thing, my guess would be that was a graphic designer using a motion design plugin incorrectly.
Probably.
So I imagine it's a she. I don't know why. But he or she
make Mo the sexist.
Yeah, I usually don't think of women as being such audio pedantic nerds like you or I. That something like this would catch our attention in a negative way. But yeah, I can't understand why. I think it would. Well, yeah, I've got a lot of thoughts on that. It would take too long to really give even a good charitable guess as to what that might be, and I would probably be wrong anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, sorry, I cut you off.
No, you're good. And just you said that the guy who wrote this, is a friend of yours.
Yeah, you want any spoilers or anything?
No spoilers. It was just like I try not to be too critical when people have an emotional investment, but just
tear them up, bro.
Okay. The vibe I got from that opening passage there was just like somebody who had spent too much time in college or high school English classes of like how to use super flowery language to convey, like, it was just like, this is too much.
It's certainly NPR coded.
Okay.
I understand that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. He well, yeah, he works for an arts school, you know, and he's like a speech writer, and so he's got the kind of blue church seal of approval for his writing.
That makes more sense.
Yeah, he's won like the Thurber Prize and stuff too. So he's it's kind of interesting because in terms of like his professional life, and I hope I'm not giving away any secrets or anything like that.
I'm completely blind on this one.
Yeah, his professional life is pretty like NPR, and then his real life, you can kind of tell, is not as much in NPR. It's certainly not like a Barstool. You know, he would definitely be on the like Cale Zeldin end of the like bow tie distribution. And actually, it's funny.
That's such a great way of describing it. I'm sorry.
He doesn't used to dress like this with this is kind of what I'm talking about with just like the t-shirt and the backwards hat. Like if I let's see. Yeah, you can see right there. This other interview, which is just from 7 months ago, but they used this old photo of him where he's literally got the bow tie, the pocket square. You know, he's got the tinier glasses. Yeah, so
interesting.
Yeah, this is a new photo, and you could tell too. Well, yeah, the bow tie distribution. Yeah. Okay, but yeah, I think that's a fair critique. And in some ways, that's why I want to get him into the corner, right? Is so that he can kind of just put down the blue church prophilicity and you know, hang out with some real weird you know, intellectual nut jobs. It was funny. A couple of years ago, I asked him about like what he thought about Lacan. And he was like, I don't really know that much about Lacan. He's like, if you're interested in like psychoanalysis, I would recommend this guy Jordan Peterson. He did a great a great series on Genesis. And I had already been like, you know, elbows deep in Jordan Peterson by that point. Like I was
really, go on, tell me about this. Yeah, I've never heard of it before.
Like, oh yeah. I did end up listening through it again just because I was like, oh yeah, you're right. I haven't listened to that in like 2 or 3 years. And so it was good. But yeah, pretty funny. And he's older than me too. So he's kind of one of those like used to be a mentor, more of a mentor. And as we've gotten older, and I haven't actually talked to him in a while, but he was one of the men who really helped me after I got fired from the megachurch, kind of not feel like a complete outcast and that unredeemable and that kind of thing. So I'll always kind of treasure him. And he's also the kind of guy I know I could like call him right now and just kind of be like, I need help. And that's really not off of that much time together. It's more so off of like a few key moments kind of a thing.
Yep.
But I wasn't around for any of the stuff from this book. Like it was, I know a lot of the unnamed people in it. Funny. But yeah, I wasn't around for any of this stuff. I had already moved to Asheville when this stuff was going on. So I'm going to play it again. See if I come in.
Funny. It's very vulnerable. But this was a deeply painful book to read in a lot of ways. It was interesting to me as well. Like, your work often doesn't paint you in a positive light. Like, you're
Sure.
self-deprecating in a lot of ways in a lot of your books. And
Also-
this one, you're very self-deprecating as well.
I haven't listened to this interview in a long time too, so I probably listened to this before I joined, kind of started really getting into TLC participation mode.
Mhm.
So maybe I listen back to this and I'm like, nah, dog, he can't be one of us. He can't join. He's not
He
allowed.
can't hang with the gang.
Yeah. He's not allowed. It's not allowed.
To me about navigating this thread of writing a book about something that's incredibly painful and wanting to write something that's entertaining and comical. And also, one of the things I thought was striking about the book is you avoid creating a sense of victimhood as well.
Yeah.
So there's some threads there I thought were fascinating for you to navigate. And so I'm curious, as a starting place, how much was that intentional? How much was that just the way of unearthing the writing was?
All of those are great questions, and questions that you have to struggle with when you're writing any story. So the first question, or the first sort of way I'll answer that, is anything that I write is going to be funny. I don't mean that like I'm awesome and so funny and so talented, but that's just the way that I see the world. I've written a lot about comedy, and I have a PhD in playwriting, and I wrote a dissertation about comedy, and I used Augustine's concepts of nature and grace and Pauline theology and Augustine theology to
I'm
talk
just
about
thinking
what
about the
comedy really is.
breakdancer.
Because I used to struggle with comedy
The
growing up in
Australian
a church
breakdancer
that
at the
laughs
Olympics.
were somehow bad, or if you were laughing that you must be mocking somebody or hurting somebody else. But I knew that there was something holy and beautiful and true about laughter. What I love about laughter is if people laugh, then something true has been said. And so for me, laughter has just always been my truth detector. It's just the way that I see the world. And laughter points out incongruities. Something is supposed to be one way, and in fact, it's another way. And maybe nobody talks about it. And so people laugh because when you talk about that thing that's supposed to be this way, but actually is this way, when you do that and people laugh, they're acknowledging you're like, yeah, you're right. We all lie about that thing. So no matter what I wrote, I've delivered, 3 or 4 eulogies in my life. They're all funny. And obviously they're not silly. They're not going to be completely ridiculous, but I love laughter and I love comedy. So whether I'm writing about my father or writing about the South, as I did in my first book, or writing about careers and the American dream, as I did in my second book, or writing about infidelity and God and church and faith, it's going to be funny. I can't help that. That's just my voice. So in one sense, it's just my nature to write funny about anything that happens to me. And the challenge with this book was, wow, this is really heavy stuff. How can I do this in the way that won't seem flippant to people, that won't seem to degrade or devalue what we were going through? So that's one answer. You also asked about victimhood and how do I write in a way as to not be a victim? It's really easy to do that. I mean, when your wife has an affair, most of my life, I walk around sort of not sure where I stand with people, not sure if I'm doing the right thing or the wrong thing or the wise thing, if I need to shut up or speak, how I need to act in any particular moment. So the move that I make in my writing, and anyone out there who's interested in writing about themselves, you generally want to make yourself the bad guy in anything you write because you have an implicit power as the author. You are speaking, you have the floor, you control the words and the sentences and the angles and the view, like you control the viewfinder. And so because of you have that power, you have a responsibility to show that you are not using it for selfish ends. And so you throw yourself up as the chief of all sinners, so to speak, in anything you write. And sometimes what that means is I'm usually the idiot in most scenes that I'm writing. I'm confused. I don't know what to do. I'm a little bit like George Costanza in Seinfeld. I'm never quite sure who I'm supposed to be in any particular scene. So being an idiot, being a fool is a kind of sin in a way, because that means you lack knowledge. But that was really hard with this book because when your wife has an affair with a neighbor, even though most of my days seem gray and the black and the white are not quite clear, it's very clear when your wife has an affair, like, wow, that is a bad thing. So how can I tell this story without making her the villain? Because man, she looks like the villain. And anybody you tell the story to, when this first happened and I would talk to my friends about it, she was the bad person and I was the victim. And poor Harrison, what can we do to help you, brother? And what I realized I needed to do was to show people I needed to go back into the past. So
I could hear you muttering and interjecting, but I couldn't hear what you were saying. My dog did come back in. Thank God.
Good. Oh, what was it that I was muttering and interjecting? Oh, I understand the idea, like well, there's a lot of complicated things there. So there's this idea in the legal system called a statement against interest, where if somebody says something that is damaging to the case that they're bringing forward, you can pretty reliably take that to be true without further investigation, because why would they bring it up if it's damaging to the case unless it was true?
Yeah, it's the old apologetic of the first witnesses of the risen Lord were females whose legal witness was inadmissible because they were not full persons.
So the thought that I had with that was that, like, yes, you can make yourself the bad guy, and that acts as a sort of statement against interest where, like, I'm telling the truth, because why else would I be framing myself in such a poor light? And it's like, okay, I see that you're trying to avoid going down too much of a narcissistic road when you do that. But at the same time, you don't.
I think that the narcissism question is kind of I don't know how to talk about it because he's like a memoir writer,
Mhm.
you know? And so like there's a sense in which you kind of have to be a little bit of a narcissist in order to even think that a memoir would be valuable to anybody else.
Yep.
So like but this is also just the artist's dilemma, right? Like I've in my life found it much easier to well, not the whole time, not my whole life. At this stage of my life, it feels much more comfortable to just admit that yes, I have some narcissistic tendencies. I am often too obsessed and self-focused. Now, can I just please be an extroverted neurotic in peace? you know,
Yeah.
so I hear you 100%, but then I think I heard him just now too kind of go into teacher mode
Mhm.
about how he talks to his students about memoir writing basically and humor writing.
Mhm.
And so he's also trying to put a spin on the whole punch up and punch down thing as well.
Punching down at yourself since you are the one who's on top because you're writing
Yeah.
the story.
Yep.
Okay.
And he's also he said kind of he mentioned he wrote a dissertation on comedy and humor that was from was it Aquinas and somebody else, but he's got his Presbyterian theology, you know, total depravity working too, where
Mhm.
it's like, yeah, and this is Kierkegaard, like we need to be objective with ourselves and subjective with everyone else, kind of a thing. And I don't know if he got that from Kierkegaard, but that's certainly, I think probably more so what he was pointing to rather than the like, the kind of meta narcissistic move of knowing that people will trust me more if I say bad things about me. So I'm going to purposely say bad things so that you'll trust me more. Because I
Beat
think
me
that's
to
what you were
it.
kind of pointing to.
That was exactly what I was going towards.
Yeah. Tayo, I'm going to let you on, but can you give us a voice check as soon as you're on the stage just so that we know it's you? There's the face, the lovely face. All right. Okie dokie. Never mind. You don't have to give a voice check. One other thing that I just remembered is I did want to be making a beat while this was going on. So I'm going to press play again and start doing that.
Okay.
And I think I'm going to make a more hip hop beat today. I on purpose didn't make this as a chill stream because I might make something a little stanky, you know, we might get the energy up, you know. So we'll just see. We'll see. See if we can't get Tayo dancing in his living room.
What'd you say, Teo? Teo?
I was just adding to McMo's metaphor by adding grimy.
Grimy. Grungy?
Are you talking about UK grime, bruv? Or just in general more grimy?
Either or.
All right, noted. Okay, press play. And once again,
second or third chapter, I back up and I tell you who we were when we got married, and I show you how tender and loving our marriage was. I show you all of the ways that I hurt my wife. Not terrible ways, but in little digs. You know, we're both funny people. We both make fun of each other. And there's a whole chapter, I think it's called Love is a Joke. And it's about how humor is what made us fall in love, but it also is what we use to hurt one another. So if I show you all those things, I can show you my wife as a three-dimensional character. And I can show you how I screwed the marriage up. That, you know, in a sense, this book is a murder mystery. And in every murder mystery, somebody dies in the first chapter. And what died here is our marriage. And so the whole book is really an investigation of who killed this thing. And it looks like she did. That's the red herring. She's the bad guy. She and this other guy that she had the affair with. And that's the red herring of the book. And I go in this investigation and I talk to God. I talk to my friends. I go back and read the Bible from start to finish, the King James. I'm looking for answers. Who killed this marriage? Is it really dead? Can it come back to life? And if so, how do we do that? So it's that once I realized that this wasn't really about, I mean, this book, of course, it's about an affair. When you read the book jacket, it talks about the affair. But saying this book is about my wife's affair is sort of like saying the movie Jaws is about marine biology. It's not quite that. That's just the plot device that compels all of the biggest questions of who are we? What is love? What is a marriage? I mean, marriage is just a crucible in which you really learn what truth and love and forgiveness are. Right. And so it's really a book about faith in a way.
In those early chapters, part of the picture that you paint is the sort of comedic cynicism you both had about, you know, people who post on social media, you know, about their spouses being their best friends. And there's kind of an arc to that where you recognize that there's a longing underneath the laughter, right? There's something, there's a sadness to the joke. Groucho Marx has this line where he says, all laughter is rooted in despair.
Yeah.
And I kept thinking about that over and over reading the book. because it is the comedy of kind of the holy fool who's stumbling through life and doesn't realize that he's revealing truth. I wonder, as you thought about including some of those, particularly some of those early stories, intentionally or unintentionally, the degree to which
I think
you're
the holy
commenting
fool
on
knows.
cynicism as a device of the age. The way we communicate in general is just deeply cynical. And has that changed for you?
Yeah,
I mean, do
one
you
of the
find
weird
yourself
things
less sympathetic to the sort of cynical
as I'm
laughing at my
listening
wife's
back
my
to
best
this
friend, the comedy of the way we display ourselves?
is, and I remember thinking this when I first heard the interview,
Mhm.
was I was like, this was right when I was starting to realize that like basically the difference between Christian YouTube and TLC as well.
Mhm.
Because I was just like, when I talk to Harrison, it's not that different than this, right? But if I was talking to him and I said something like that about like the holy fool, he'd probably be more likely to be like, whoa, 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 whoa. Like, what do you mean? You know, he'd bring out the lightsaber kind of a thing and be like, or he'd make a joke kind of showing that I don't really know what the holy fool is. So like, yeah, that is a weird thing. Like, I do not co-sign what's his name, the host of this, even though I did like his work on Fall and Rise of Mars Hill. Just like aesthetically, I liked the work. You know, that whatever. He's apparently a liberal, so I can't like him anymore.
I think that's one of the things too about TLC though, is like it's not like listening to somebody or hearing them out does not mean that you're endorsing what they have to say. Like
Yep.
There seems to be that misunderstanding in a lot of other places in the internet, and I wouldn't say just TLC that's just like in Christian YouTube, like that's pretty predominant everywhere else that I've seen, is like, oh, you listen to that person? How could you? Like, it's like, you must believe everything they say if you're listening to them. It's like, no, well, I don't.
And what's weird too is that it's like an expert fallacy thing too, right? Like whenever you interview somebody in the NPR mode, immediately it's kind of, the medium is the message, right?
Yep.
So it's really hard to slip out or to not fall into the kind of I'm the expert, I'm going to teach mode.
We are transmitting.
Oh no, go ahead.
We are transmitting the truth TM to you.
Right. And so you can even hear that in the question, but it's interesting too, because I can hear, like I said, I hear Harrison, slipping into teacher mode. And it's like, that's what he is, an expert in that, like he's given TED Talks and all that stuff. And so, yeah, he's an expert at kind of going into that teacherly mode. But that's why I kind of, if anything, I just want people to read the books or listen to the audiobooks, because, well, for one, he reads them. So, kudos to him. And actually in the most recent one, his wife wrote and reads her chapter in it as well.
Wow.
But I highly, highly, highly recommend the book. And I'm really just kind of playing this interview so that people will download the Audible audiobook.
You're shilling for your friend? How could you, McMo?
I'm shilling for my friend because of the content of Face to Face and some recent conversations in the Bridges of Meaning Discord. And not, I mean, it speaks to like the marriage crisis and the enemy crisis, LOL, the enema crisis, the intimacy crisis.
I mean, enemas can be very intimate, I suppose, but
yeah, I don't think you could get much more intimate than an enema.
We did say it was going to get grimy, right? There we go.
With intimacy like these, who needs enemas? Okay, I'll press play and get going on this beat.
On cynicism as a device of the age. The way we communicate in general is just deeply cynical. And has that changed for you? I mean, do you find yourself less sympathetic to the sort of cynical laughing at my wife's my best friend, the comedy of the way we display ourselves?
I don't believe all laughter is rooted in cynicism. What does G.K. Chesterton say? He has this quote that I use as an epigraph for the book. Angels can fly because they can take themselves lightly. And I do believe that at its best, laughter is an acknowledgement of brokenness. Things are not right. And look, and nobody's talking about this particular thing. I talk a lot about in the book how you hear so many platitudes in marriage sermons and wedding ceremonies, but nobody talks about how hard it's actually going to be, because you can't take it. I mean, it's a heavy truth to take, especially on a wedding day. So for me, all comedy is rooted in hope that, all right, we have to acknowledge that these things are broken before we can find a better way, either before we can fix them or God can fix them or someone or circumstances can fix them. And so I do think that my wife and I still laugh at weirdo married couples who, go to Disney without their children. I still think that's really strange. But as long as I acknowledge I'm laughing, not just because that's weird, and it is weird, but also because I don't understand it.
Mm-hmm.
And it is a little strange. And I used to laugh because I thought I was better or smarter than those people, just to use that example, or people who talk, like you said, who talk on Facebook about how they married their best friend. I'm so lucky that I married my best friend. And I'm like, I don't know. That seems insane to me. Like I actually have best friends, and it just seems to, it's this weird humble brag. Like I married my best friend. I don't know who you married, but I married my best friend.
I married my best friend.
We get along so well. And I think, would your spouse also say that? It almost like a spouse has a gun to the back of their head.
I married my best friend, and we fight
yes, I did
constantly.
marry my best friend. So now I realize that my laughter, the joke I'm making, is not just, it's not like, oh, I'm superior to these people because I'm not a weirdo, but they have something that I want. I don't know if they're lying. Some of them might be, but what they are describing is a beautiful thing that is not true for most people. That's where the laughter is. And so you're not just laughing at them, you're really laughing at yourself. And that's what I learned. So my wife and I are still very funny people, and we still pick on each other so much. People ask, like, do you pick on your wife as much as you used to? And does she pick on you? And what I tell them is like, we used to laugh at each other, and now we laugh with each other while making fun of other people. That's what, so we're mostly our children. We take ourselves less seriously now, and that actually allows more laughter.
Yeah.
So when we did our book launch a couple of weeks ago, Lauren, my wife, and I both spoke at that. And that was pretty heavy, as you can imagine, 250 people there in this community, including people from many churches that I talk about in this book in an unfavorable way. They're there. I'm thinking, I guess they haven't read the book yet, but they will. And maybe they won't be friends with me after that. Maybe some of them will agree. A lot of people have reached out to me secretly. They're like, everybody in my church hates this book, but actually they all love this book and they can't stop reading it, but they won't admit that to each other. So yeah, my wife and I both.
Wait, why wouldn't they
pick on
admit it to each other?
More, but it's so much in love.
Because admitting it means they have marital
defensive.
problems?
Our guard is not as up as it used to be.
Yeah, it's the
So
it's
at the
the
book launch,
social
my wife was
tax
like,
of
somebody asked her in the Q&A, why did you marry your husband?
enjoying
She's
it.
like, she said, obviously not for his looks. and then she just went into this awesome monologue about how weird I looked, and everybody was dying laughing. But they're laughing because they're acknowledging, like, wow, I just wrote a book that exposed my wife like incredibly to the entire world, and here she is exposing me, and there was some justice in that, and that's why they were laughing. So yeah, we still laugh a lot, but there's not as much cynicism in it. You have two choices. Life is heavy. It is so heavy, and you can be bitter, or you can laugh about it. That's it. Those are your options. You can choose to look at life as a tragedy. And I talk about in the book, I have been in churches where the pastors have said, the Christian life is a tragic life. And I could not disagree with that more. Now, I get what they're saying, like the Christian life is full of disappointment and death and sin, but life to me is a comedy. Every great comedy ends in a marriage. The Bible ends in a marriage. Comedy is about acknowledging, and I wrote about this in my dissertation, at the end of the day, so I'll give you a little 30-second sort of my theory about comedy here and how it relates to the Christian life, which is I used to look at comedy and I would see so many despicable characters, like, again, George Costanza, Michael Scott, Dwight Schrute. They're idiots, they're fools, they're liars, they're always lying. Our comic heroes are always lying. And I used to think, okay, as a Christian educated in Christian worldview and Francis Schaeffer and C.S. Lewis and Calvinism, like, how do I write a heroic, noble comic character? And then I realized I couldn't. They don't exist. And what makes the tragic hero, who is very noble and upright, and the comic hero so different, is that the comic hero at some point is exposed and recognized as a liar. And in his humility, in his humbling, that's when the truth comes out, and that's when love and salvation occur.
I feel like
that's
he's
why we
just been
love
so
George Costanza and Michael Scott. Anyway,
enmeshed in that
we
pattern
finally
that he just
find out
can't
that they are
see an
fakes, and they
alternative,
learn that they're
though.
fakes, and that's the story of every believer who.
what's the pattern and what can't he see?
The pattern is that our comedic heroes have to be liars, that they have to be these bordering on like unredeemable idiots or whatever, and I don't like that can't be correct. Like that there has to be a positive mirror to that. Like I don't know. I'm not a good enough comedian to be able to say it though.
That riddle.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's why I'm an absurdist.
Mhm.
It's not the only reason why, but it's one of the reasons why. Because I think that any type of heroism that is comfortable at the top of the hierarchy, we'll say, is an unchrist-like heroism. It is not the top of the telos. It is not the top of the hierarchy because it is not reaching down to the bottom of the hierarchy.
Mhm.
And that a fool is closer to a saint than a king will ever be, kind of a thing. I just made that up, but it sounds like something that somebody smart would have written, so I'm going to stick with it.
Yeah, I'll roll with it. That sounds about right, at least. But yeah, it's just like I don't see how that can be the case. That's a symptom of the fallen state, not something that's an actual. Ooh.
I think the pattern that he settled on is the revelation of the revealing of the truth is what makes it funny, what makes it comical. And I think that's right.
That is correct, but the thing that I think bothers me is like it's not I think that what happens is in the good pattern, and I'm just spitballing here because I haven't really given this much thought, that you have the holy fool who has some sort of deeper understanding than everybody else seems to have, and he knows that if he tries to communicate it to everyone directly, that they will just not understand it, that they will completely miss the point, and that they will actually go in the opposite direction from that truth if he reveals it to them directly. And so he has to, through foolish action, guide them into right behavior. And then at the very end, the reveal happens, and it's like, oh, that was the whole point of all of this the entire time, was to get everything moving in this direction. And now that you see the truth, you can see, you have a deeper understanding of the whole story that preceded it. But you wouldn't have been able to know the end at the beginning and still be able to get to the end in the same way. I think that's what it is.
Yeah, and from the description of the it sounds like it follows the pattern.
Yeah, I would say maybe I wasn't listening that close because I was focusing on the beat. Should have been listening closer to you, but if you want to be listened to, go to Grail Country. I'm here to make beats, people.
This is the chaos stream.
Sherry cares, McMo doesn't.
I got to talk with her last night, so I'm good on the caring front. Let's bring on the chaos.
Yeah, like, I don't know. I think maybe you're getting hung up on it being a comedic hero, right? Like, from his point of view, like, there's not that much. He's not necessarily talking about like the type of Marvel comedy where it's like, you know, Iron Man is throwing out quips or something. I think he's more talking about, and he's talked about this before in the ways in which he considers Jesus to be like the first stand-up comedian. And the thing that he points to is the forgiving your brother 7 times 70 times as like a joke or a and so, but then also you got to understand that this is post Job, the book of Job, right? Like he has been through the valley of the shadow of death and miraculously come out very, very different. And but yeah, like he's also kind of got that literary brain too. So he's probably thinking of like a literary archetype specifically. He's probably not thinking of like a Jungian embodied you know, like ideal that someone could follow or something, you know? Like I would be more I give him the benefit of the doubt in the sense that I almost always assume he's talking about something literary because he's like an English teacher kind of a thing.
I give him the benefit of the doubt. What I think is happening though is that he is pointing to something within the culture that is fundamentally broken. That we have these comedic heroes of George Costanza and Michael Scott, and that they are grossly incompetent. They are put into positions that they should not be in. They lie constantly. Like, they are not good people by almost any metric. And there are some moments of redemption for them occasionally, but that seems like such an inversion of what comedy could be that it bothers me a lot. Like, why do we have, like, if someone wants to be funny, why is the aspirational fool such a terrible human being?
Well, do we have examples of fools who are good human beings? Because this guy certainly is coming from the standpoint of like a total depravity, kind of a low, it's called low anthropology, right? That we're and this is where I stand too. You know, I'm a Protestant. I'm a radical, heretical Protestant. I don't think that well, I should not speak.
Would it be too much to say that Jesus was a fool?
He's foolishness to the Greeks, right? And a stumbling block to the Jews. So, yeah, there's something there. I don't know if I think I agree with you in the sense that we haven't quite cracked the code on the archetype like we have in the like Saint George or like Knights of the Round. Like some of the old myths seem to capture the hero better than they do the fool or something. Or that the nature of the fool, and because it's on the fringe, necessitates that it can't be kind of iconicized or something, like it can't be congealed around this one ideal because the very nature of the fool is that it's always going to be the fringe. But I'm probably partaking in some inside out thinking or some sort of, whatever. So don't listen to me, folks.
Not if you want to stay in your church.
Who walks the planet. We all learn that we are liars. We are lying to ourselves. And once that's exposed, you can find salvation.
Yeah, I mean, coming back to you talking about your wife, I can't imagine being in the room for the launch of the book and, knowing people have read the book and the way you speak about it. It struck me as like, I said this before we got going, I was a pastor for 15 years and dealt with a lot of marriage questions and talked to a lot of married people as they were struggling through things and or prepping for marriage and that sort of thing. And like one of the rules, one of the rules of marriage is you never badmouth your wife in public, right? You never badmouth your spouse in public.
Oops.
and I think it's safe to say that the way you talk about her, not just like the way it affected you and how you felt.
That was funny.
Oops.
True. Oops. Like he wrote a whole book about his wife cheating on him. That's funny. His wife is hilarious too. Can confirm.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
But your feelings about her in that moment, the ways you thought about her, the sense of anger, sort of sense of righteous anger and rage at her and quote unquote Chad, the Chad passages, your description of Chads in general. That was maybe one of my favorite parts of the book is descriptions of Chad.
Yeah. So he didn't, basically his wife cheated on him with his neighbor, and he didn't want to name the neighbor. So he just calls him Chad. And it's pretty funny. Sorry, Chad, if you're out there, Chad the alcoholic, that is. Certainly a different Chad.
It's gonna be very awkward after Chad reads the book and brings him on for a rando.
Yeah. We don't even know if Chad's real name is Chad. For all we know, it could just be a nom de plume.
Well, maybe it's like a Spanish name. That's why he wears the Spanish luchador mask. He just got a really good American accent because he's been here for so long.
Yeah, it's true.
Also, just one other thing to touch on before we get back into it. Cassandra's comment made me think of, what's the name of it? The one with big blue naked guy.
Watchmen?
Watchmen, thank you. The character of the comedian in that. And like how
very funny.
Well, he is in a way though. And that's the strange irony of it. Like there's this twisted, warped irony pervading all of the actions that they're taking, that they're being lauded as heroes, but really they're just mass murderers, that they're going and being mercenaries for a government that just wants to conquer. But back home they're being celebrated, and it's like, look at how great these people are. And it's like, it's a very dark humor, but it is extremely funny in that sort of a perspective. And I guess that's kind of what I'm afraid of, is that if you're going down the lines of those comic heroes, right, the ones that are pushed by modern media, it's like, okay, are you actually trying to bring about something good in the world, or are you actually trying to bring about monstrosity and laughing about it and encouraging people? Because like if the source of your sort of comedic impulses are watching The Office and watching Seinfeld, and you think, oh, if I want to be funny, if I want to make people laugh, then I have to act in this sort of a way. And maybe even if you're not thinking about that consciously, if that's just what your subconscious is picking up on, is like, oh, if I act this way, then I'll be funny. And it's a good thing. People like to laugh. People want me to be funny. And so I should do these mean, horrible things to other people because that's what I'm supposed to do. And it's like, wait a second. that's there's something going wrong here. Can't really quite put my finger on it, but mind control comes up to the front of my head.
Yeah, yeah. There. What's striking to me about what you're talking about too is like the difference between existentially the fool from the outside versus the fool from the inside, kind of a thing.
Well, and how we're modeling the fool on the inside for ourselves and then embodying that back into the world.
Yeah, and also it's a weird like sense of humor is such a funny thing, right? It is kind of it's a matter of taste in some regard, but then there's obvious overlaps in genres and kind of degrees or something. Yeah. Tayo, any thoughts before I click play again?
Yeah, I don't know if I'm picking up the same thing that Alfredo's picking up from this so far.
Yeah, me neither. I just mostly been letting him cook and make my beats.
But I do understand the worry in the culture that you're pointing at in terms of the celebrated archetype. But so far, I think he's doing something a little different to that. I think he spoke about that because that was his education, his programming, mind control into what comedy is supposed to be. But I think by recognizing also, I'm interested in the book. I'm definitely gonna get the book on audiobook because I like the idea of a mystery that you already know the answer to, and I'm interested to see how he weaves that together. McMo, you can click play.
Ads. Talk to me about that. Like, how did you navigate, and probably with her to some extent, the way you were going to talk about the emotions of betrayal, the sense of emotional betrayal?
I mean, I guess in a sense, kind of what you're asking is, how did you get away with writing this book? Like, what did your wife think about all this? That's what a lot of people want to know. The short answer is, after we reconciled, I was writing about this as it was happening, kind of like battlefield reports. In a way, like if you read the Psalms, like you can tell whatever's going on with this.
Thank you. So that moment right there of like that's comedy. The interviewer was sort of asking a veiled question, therapist speak, and he just ripped up, nope, this is what you're really asking, and let's get to it.
Let's listen to that again.
You navigate, and probably with her to some extent, the way you were going to talk about the emotions of betrayal, the sense of emotional betrayal.
I mean, I guess in a sense, kind of what you're asking is, how did you get away with writing this book? Like, what did your wife think about all this? That's what a lot of people want to know.
Yes.
The short answer is, after we reconciled, I was writing about this as it was happening, kind of like battlefield reports. In a way, like if you read the Psalms, like you can tell whatever's going on with the psalmist, like there's some heavy stuff going on.
Right.
And he's writing about these Psalms, these songs, these prayers are happening kind of in the moment. Like something has just happened to this guy and he is desperate for help.
Right.
And that's sort of how I wrote the book. I was writing it as this was happening. And so when my wife came home about 3 months later, after we had sort of gotten through the most touch and go moments, but it was still, obviously, she'd only been back for 3 months. But I said, I think I've got to write about this. And she sort of expected that because she knows me. We've been married for 20 years. She knows I write about everything. And she said, can't you just write about our dog or something? Like a book about Gary? People would love that. Like I really should write a book about Gary. I could sell 1 million copies. But it was too much for her to handle. And I said, you know what? I said, let's forget about it. I'm going to keep working on whatever this thing is, but nobody has seen it. And it's fine. But it doesn't even exist. And so a year later, again, after going to therapy every week and having many, many long conversations about what happened, about a year later, I handed her the manuscript. And I said, if you don't love this book, I will burn it and nobody will ever see it. And she said, okay. And she took it and she read it in a couple of days. And she came back and she said, I think she was shocked at how angry it wasn't. I think she thought it was going to be like a revenge memoir. And she said, it's missing one thing. And I said, you tell me, girl, what's it missing? And she said, I want to write something for it. And I was hoping she would ask that. And so she went and wrote her chapter. It only took her about a week, which is really frustrating because it takes me really long to write anything good. And she wrote this an amazing chapter. It was her story that she had finally expressed. And in some sense, a lot of the pain in our marriage happened because, not all of it, but a lot of it, because she hadn't ever really articulated her story in that way, in a hopeful way. She'd gone through depression and so many terrible things things happen to my wife, and you'll find out about them when you read the book. So when she gave me that chapter, I knew that was it. And so what we did next, we're like, okay, well, now we got this thing that we both feel like is good. And we both agree, like, when you see a miracle, you want to tell people. And we both felt that way about this book. We experienced a miracle, or a series of miracles. And so the next thing we did was I chose a chapter, and then she had her chapter, and we read those in front of our church and some other friends. Like, we got everybody together on a Wednesday afternoon one summer, like I guess it was last summer, and we invited everybody from church, and we invited lots of our friends who don't go to church, and they all came. Most of these people knew the story because these are people who had helped us through it. So they weren't learning anything. Some of them were learning some shocking truths in it.
I did
And
not
so
know the
I read my
story.
bit, she read her bit, and this is hard for me to say because this is not.
But also, I wasn't there. I couldn't
holy
make
moment.
it. But I did not.
People were
I was
weeping.
going to go
It
completely
was
blind,
so
and I ended up not
heavy
being able to
and
make it.
wild. And there were a lot of men who would not make eye contact with me for like a couple of months. They were really shook deep by the story. So little by little, the story was shared with our community, with our family members. There were a lot of bridges to repair and relationships to repair. And then so by the time the book came out, it was a story that we had processed over and over and over, almost like exposure therapy. You're afraid of snakes, so you have to touch the snake and hold the snake. And it was sort of like that over and over again. So by the time the book came out, it was more traumatic for other people to read than for us to share.
I'm glad you mentioned your community, your church, because faith really does sit at the center of this book.
That's a really good point, by the way.
There's a
You mind
passage that
pausing
I wanted to highlight. You said, "My hilarious comedy of a marriage turned out to be."
Was it?
It was more traumatic for other people to read for them than for them to share. Like, that's a profound point. Sorry, I just wanted to highlight it. We can keep going.
Well, you're completely right. That is powerful. Because I think, too, we often think that it would be much harder to share than it is to hear. But we think that because it's so hard to hear, right?
Well, and okay, I'll touch one thing from the conference. There were multiple times, because Rafe didn't just tell his story up on the stage. He talked a lot about it while we were in our breakout group 9 represent. And there were multiple times where I had just tears streaming down my face listening to it. And he's already processed it a good bit. I think he's still working through processing a good bit of it. But it was just very, very powerful, very impactful.
Yep.
I'm surprised you didn't say gay.
On that point, really quickly before I was too late. I think that's partly why I appreciate McMo bringing this into the corner in this moment, because after us that didn't get a chance to go to the conference, the release of the talks at the conference, I think this is an appropriate timing for it. This book.
At night in the dark, God dragged me through the emptiest valley of the shadow of death, the lowest altitude of my life. I needed to pray, but how do you pray to a God who allowed this joke of a marriage? What do you even say? I got out of bed onto the floor. God, I said into the dark, help. Was God listening? Was he a fiction too? If God was just as unreal as my marriage,
for us to share.
I'm glad you mentioned your community, your church, because faith really does sit at the center of this book in a lot of ways. There's a passage that I wanted to highlight. You said, "My hilarious comedy of a marriage turned out to be the biggest joke of all. That night in the dark, God dragged me through the emptiest valley of the shadow of death, the lowest altitude of my life. I needed to pray, but how do you pray to a God who allowed this joke of a marriage? What do you even say? I crawled out of bed onto the floor. God, I said into the dark, help. Was God listening? Was he a fiction too? If God was just as unreal as my marriage, then what to make of virtues of love and justice and mercy, which emanated from the character and person of God according to the teachings of my religion? What did I believe precisely about God anyway? Whatever future lay ahead for my family, I knew would be determined by my answer to that question." In a similar way to the way you talk about your marriage, the way you talk about God, the way you talk about faith in this book is very self-exposing. It's very vulnerable, including, as you said, a moment ago, or alluded to a moment ago, sort of your negative experiences inside some church communities as you were processing this. There's an obvious answer to this question, but I'll ask it anyway, which is, why religion? Like, why was religion the place that you went to? Why was faith the place that you turned to when your marriage fell apart?
Well, in a sense, it wasn't so much faith, but it was the need for ultimate answers. And so when you experience something like this, whether it's the tragic loss of a child, addiction, abuse, anything that's like up there, level 10, a tsunami in your life, and you really want to do what's right, you want to know what's happening and make the right moves. What do I do about our home? What do I do about our children? How do I treat my wife? Do I burn all of our clothes in the yard? Do I take a baseball bat and go, beat this guy up? Do I move out? Do I go on a sex bender and start drinking and using? Like, I wanted to do all of those things.
Rebellion
Hold on, I
against
need to
creation.
sample that. I need to sample that for this beat.
Okay.
This would be a good time. No, I'm gonna do that later. Yeah, you guys can't see what I'm working on, but that's all right.
It's all good. If you do, no, sample it. Don't lose the thread. Sample it real quick.
I ain't gonna lose no threads, brother. I'm in the zone.
Okay.
I know you feel that.
You can't see my stank face.
You can't what?
You can't see my stank face. I need to get a camera on.
Is that grimy? Is that grimy enough for you, Kyle?
You're cooking.
I'll take that as a not yet, brother in Christ. Not yet, me brother in Christ. Not yet. Anytime Tayo speaks, that's what I actually hear. My brain actually translates it into a bad American's version of a British accent.
A bad somewhere between Cockney and Liverpool accent. Yeah.
Yeah. It's also heavily influenced by the guy who's like, "What am I being arrested for? Eating a succulent Chinese meal?"
That's one top 10 things the internet has given us is that clip.
It's true. I don't even remember what that's called. All right, I'm gonna sample this now.
Watches Love Island once. God bless.
Tommy, in your life, and you really want to do what's right. You want to know what's happening and make the right moves. What do I do about our home? What do I do about our children? How do I treat my wife? Do I burn all of our clothes in the yard? Do I take a baseball bat and go, beat this guy up? Do I move out? Do I go on a sex bender and start drinking and using? Like, I wanted to do all of those things because I didn't know what to do. It was so extreme. So what do? Well, you look for wisdom. And this is anybody, Christians, non-Christians, no matter what you are. If you're trying to find real answers, not short-term solutions, if you're trying to divine real truth out of this situation and know what to do, you're going to look for ultimate answers and ultimate wisdom. And what that means is ancient wisdom. Like, all right, the human race has been around for a while now, and these ancient books, the Bible, the Tao Te Ching, Aristotle's Poetics, even like these old plays, old books, old novels, books of religious wisdom provide answers that are more durable no matter what you believe. And so for me, the first immediate answer was, okay, I'm a Christian, which purports to provide answers and guidance in a moment like this. So what does that look like? I know what my instincts tell me. I know what the culture tells me to do. The culture said, hey, man, you're good, man. Just like let this girl go and go live your best life. Burn all her clothes in the yard. You'll be fine. You're going to go find a new, beautiful you if you just like focus on you. That's what the culture said. And even some of my Christian friends. The bad advice I got was focus on you now. This is all about you. So go live your best life. Or you should hate this woman now and you should hurt her in every way that you can. And even Christians said that, like cut her off financially, make her feel great shame for what she's doing. Those were the two sort of bad answers. And I'm like, I know there's more. There's so much mercy in the Bible. So what does that look like? So the metaphor I give is I was raised in the church. I've never not gone. I mean, I've definitely had periods where I wasn't in church, but I was raised in the church and I've been a believer my entire life. And I've heard all of the cliches and the metaphors and I've read the theology. I was even in seminary for a week before I dropped out. Like I've done it all. I've preached sermons. I've read more
really call that
theology
dropping
than the
out?
average person. And I've always been a Presbyterian, or at least in my adult life. And so I had all this knowledge and I'm like, wait, I've never really had to use this wisdom ever because my life has been pretty okay. And so it was like going in, sometimes when you buy an old house, there's like a shed in the backyard, and the shed is full of really old, rusty tools. My grandfather's barn had these old, rusty tools that you never knew what they were for. You could tell they used to be really important, but they hadn't been used in many years, cobwebs and rust and all that. And for me, faith was like that. It was like wandering into this barn and going, okay, what does this stuff do? How do I use this stuff to actually not die? I mean, I was on the verge of death spiritually, morally, physically. I feel like, when you have an affair, when there's a betrayal, you really open up the pit of hell. Like, you invite the devil to the party. You invite the worst kind of evil. And that's why there are so many, revenge killings when there are, you have affairs. Like, this is real. You are playing with darkness. And so going into this shed in my backyard, or, to be literal about it, opening the King James, I wanted the old stuff. I wanted the good old stuff. Like, what does this say? And so for me, I was like, okay, what does mercy look like? So the first thing I noticed as I was reading, there's a whole chapter in the book about reading the Bible. The first thing I noticed, again, these are stories that I'd heard in Sunday school and Bible bowl, Bible drill, sword drill. I did it all, man.
Bible bowl. Yeah, man.
I got my Bible bowl trophy still in my office. But I was like, oh, wait. All of the heroes of the Bible are really despicable people. Like, they're terrible people. And nobody talks about that. Or maybe if they did, I didn't notice it. And I'm like, all right, this makes me feel better, because I'm feeling pretty despicable. Like, I have ruined my marriage. And I'm sure my wife is feeling pretty despicable at what she's done. She was raised in the church too. And so that was a real comfort. Like, oh, wow. So God loves like really terrible people. Like, I knew that as a good Calvinist. Of course I knew that. But like, oh, I now realize that my wife and I are terrible people, and we are hurting our children right now with our decisions that we have made. And so that gave me a great comfort to that these people could be loved by God, and to see how they triumphed and how God pulled them through things. So that's a long-winded answer to a question of me wrestling with, what do I really believe about what is do justice, love mercy? Okay, well, justice is not merciful. They're the opposite. That's a paradox. So what do you do with that? We read that and we're like, oh yeah. Or you go to a wedding and you hear, love keeps no record of wrongs.
Justice is not merciful? Absolutely not.
Depends on who the mercy is being shown to, I guess you would say, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, I would argue, though, that even like it might not feel like mercy in the moment for the person who's having justice visited upon them, but at the same time, if you are convicted by justice for the wrong that you did, that is a wake-up call, or it should be a wake-up call to you to say, oh shit, I'm fucking up. And it's a mercy, because how much further down could you have fallen before you had that wake-up call, before you had justice visited upon you? That's all I got.
Yeah, do you think it was possible for him to show justice and mercy at the same time to his wife who had cheated on him?
Well, what would justice look like, and what would mercy look like?
I think if he didn't just lay it out, he's about to.
Okay, well, justice is not merciful. They're the opposite. That's a paradox. So what do you do with that? We read that and we're like, oh yeah. Or you go to a wedding and you hear, love keeps no record of wrong. He was raised in the church too, about what is do justice, love mercy. Okay, well, justice is not merciful. They're the opposite. That's a paradox. So what do you do with that? We read that and we're like, oh yeah. Or you go to a wedding and you hear, love keeps no record of wrongs. That's like impossible. Right. Like, how do you do that? How do you keep no record of wrongs? I say that I think Jesus is probably the first great comedian in world history, because so much of what he says is a joke. We don't read it as a joke because we read it in church where nobody really laughs. But he says, how many times must I forgive my brother? 7 times. He goes, ha, ha, ha. No. 70 times, 7 times. Right. 70 times, 70 times, 7 times. And because he's acknowledging the ridiculousness of how many times you will have to forgive people you love. And so seeing that comedy in the Bible,
because everybody sins.
It is hard.
Everyone sins all the fucking time.
Justice and love mercy. So to be just, forgive my brother.
What was that in response to? Sorry,
Ev-
I was cooking again.
No, it's all good. That's how much forgiveness that you need to be able and willing to give to people. It's like, of course, you have to be able and willing to give that much forgiveness because of how much everyone fucks up. Everyone sins all the fucking time. Like, if you're not willing and ready to forgive people for all of the transgressions that they do, and not just to you, but to themselves too, because sometimes you need a little help forgiving yourself, and having somebody else giving you that permission slip is what you need. Like,
I think you're right.
yeah.
Brother, 7 times. He goes, ha ha ha. No. 70 times 7 times.
Right.
70 times 70 times 7 times. And because he's acknowledging the ridiculousness of how many times you will have to forgive people you love. And so seeing that comedy in the Bible, I was like, wait, it is hard. So what does it mean? Do justice and love mercy. To be just would be to, in a sense, punish my wife for the wrong thing she had done, but it would also mean that I should be punished for all the wrong things I've done.
Yeah.
Love mercy. Okay, so maybe doing justice means understanding right and wrong, understanding what those things are, but loving mercy, forgiving when people can't meet that impossible standard.
Yeah.
Keeping those two things in the mind at once. That idea, I think, kept me alive throughout all this.
It brings me back to something we were talking about earlier, where you were talking about that some Christians often sort of talk about the life of faith as the life of suffering, and you were saying the life of faith is the life of comedy. It actually makes me think of the stand-up comedian Mark Maron. He has a special recently where he was talking about sort of the differences he sees in the way Jews think about their relationship with God and the way Christians do in other religions. And he says, because oftentimes in other religions you see this very sort of tender fatherly warmth between people and God. He says, but you go and you read the Old Testament, and the way people respond when God shows up. This is Marin talking. The way people respond is, what? What do you want?
Yes.
And it really is. I mean, the word Israel is this idea of a struggle with God, this sort of collision of a person, of a holiness, and with human beings, like you say, that are despicable, that are fools, that are just constantly fools. And I agree with you. I think we really lose sight of that. We like these sort of flannel graph versions of Bible stories that are very heroic and comforting, and we love Joseph's Technicolor dream coat and all of that, and forget the fact that he was like, his brothers hated him for a reason. He's constantly telling them these stories about, man, the day's coming when you guys are all going to bow down to me. Like, of course they wanted to throw him in a pit,
man.
And so anyway, it brings me back to this kind of contrast between the idea of a life of faith being a life of suffering and faith being a life ultimately of comedy. Because you kind of, there's a sense in which you don't get the comedy without the tragedy, right? Like Mel Brooks' definition, right? The tragedy is when I cut my finger, and comedy is when you fall down an open manhole, right?
And die.
And die. That's right. And the two really do live in that contrast. And I think what I appreciated about your book the most, I'm tempted to give it to every newly engaged couple that I know from here on forward, is that the importance of that contrast of, like, just so you know, this is how much marriage can hurt you, right?
Yeah.
This is how painful it can get. And in the same way, like, if you talk about reading the Old Testament, this is how painful faith can be. This is how painful life can be. It is gutting. It is a life where you will witness betrayal. You will experience pain. I guess as I'm thinking about it, like, the contrast is often one between sort of the quote unquote victorious Christian life and a life that, yes, is a life of suffering, but it all sort of comes back to, I guess, what do you expect? Do we expect the life of faith that's going to be like, okay, I'm a Christian now, I've married a good Christian girl, and everything's going to go easy from here? Or do we count on
That's a good joke.
Like, we're saved by grace, or we need to live by grace because folly and failure is going to chase us for pretty much the rest of our lives?
Yeah, we've just conflated in the American church, just the sort of beautiful American capitalist dream of everything getting better and better every day in every way for everybody. Work hard,
Line goes up,
mow your lawn, do what's right, and everything will always get awesomer. Your property will increase in value, you'll become more beautiful, and your children will have perfect teeth. But anybody who's lived long enough and who hasn't grown bitter will tell you that that's a lie. That anybody attempting to live an honest life is going to be hurt so much by the people that they love, by people they don't love. They're going to cause so many of their own problems. And, there's such great strength in weakness, or maybe strength in meekness. Meekness being the
Clip
person who doesn't lash out when they
That's part of
can.
your song.
There is strength.
Strength in weakness or strength in meekness?
Strength in weakness or strength in meekness? Is that what you said?
Yeah. Back it up just a second.
So much by the people that they love, by people they don't love. They're going to cause so many of their own problems. And, there's such great strength in weakness, or maybe strength in meekness. Meekness being the person who doesn't lash out when they can. There is strength in laying open your deepest vulnerabilities, strength in confession, strength in, we're all so keen on preening and looking awesome, looking our best on social media, at church, at work. We want the coolest, houses and nicest cars and whatever, the coolest sneakers. And that's fine. Beauty is fine. There's nothing wrong with beauty, nothing wrong with a great lawn or a beautiful home. But you're very mistaken if you think you've earned that by your own awesomeness. And you are a tiny little atom in a place in history. There are forces much more powerful than you who are helping you be successful or not successful. And God is the ultimate of those forces. So there's so much lying. There's so much lying in the world, and that includes the church, pretending to be okay. I'm not saying you have to, walk naked in the streets and talk about how broken you are, but just acknowledging the constant brokenness. I was at a bar last night after a reading, watching a baseball game, and I had my book, How to Stay Married. It's I'm sitting.
He's also not saying you should, run out naked in the street, yelling about how awful you are.
It's always an option. No, I think that. So, and I wish that he talked about it a bit more directly himself, because the thought that I have in my head of okay, we're talking about justice relative to somebody failing to meet their obligations as a husband, and then the wife cheating on the husband as a consequence of him failing to meet those obligations. And the question is what is justice in that sort of a situation, right? If you go back to Old Testament punishments, stone them both, right? But is that actually fixing the problem? Is that actually what is the outcomes or consequences of that downstream? Not obviously you now have two dead people and their orphan children to deal with, but what impact does that have to the broader community when they see that versus somebody writing out first living through coming back together with his wife and then writing that down and sharing that with other people so that they can hopefully help other people avoid that situation in the first place, where the guy realizes, oh shoot, I shouldn't be doing this, and the wife realizes, oh shoot, I should try and connect with my husband rather than going out and cheating on him, because this is what the consequences that are going to be. That's such a more powerful, if I had to pick a punishment, writing a book would be a really good punishment for this kind of a thing.
Something to that.
Because they have to sit with themselves. They have to think through all of the things that they've done, all the actions that they've taken, all the harm that they've caused. And they have to really sit with it. They have to sit with it hard enough that they actually write it down on a piece of paper or on a computer. And then they have to put that out into the world and be willing for other people to see that deep, deep part of their soul.
I think that I guess only they can say,
Mhm.
right? Because from the outside looking in, that would seem a little too karmic
Hmm.
in a sense, right?
How
That
so?
it's like it's penance. I don't believe in penance. I believe in absolution
Okay.
and sanctification. I believe in repentance, but
Mhm.
um, and not that penance is a bad thing or anything like that. But I also don't think that that's the framework in which he was looking at it.
Maybe not,
Yeah, yeah.
but
I
is
mean,
that a valid framework to look at it through?
I think it is. That's what I'm saying. Yeah, I think that is a valid framework. But then also, I'm like, you got to read the book, dude. You got to read the book because, in some sense, the point of the book is not to kind of give any type of. This is a PVK book. I'll say it that way. This is a randos book.
Mm.
It's not a philosophical or theological book. Uh, it's absolutely the personalist knowing type of thing where he kind of lets you in to their relationship and all of that kind of stuff and especially when he's reading it you can like hear the heartbreak and stuff too, so that's
Mhm.
the fact that he read, like, I almost want to say that the reading of the book is a doubling of the kind of point that you were the point that you were making, like
Mhm.
if if writing the book wasn't judgment enough or justice
Publishing
enough,
it, yeah.
excuse me, yeah, publishing it and reading it, having to read it out loud in a
Mhm.
small quiet room for hours was
Mhm.
probably its own type of psychedelic experience, I'm sure. What's up, Upcycle Club? Harris in the house. Harris in the house.
Or oh, this is giving me Undertale vibes right now.
Sitting there, and I noticed the guy to my right who's kind of eyeing the book in a funny way, and then he leans over to another guy at the bar and says something. These guys look like they were in their 30s or 40s. And then the guy leaned over, and then he goes, "Oh, that's a bold book for a man to be reading alone in a bar." uh, and I thought that was funny. And I said, I wrote the book, and we had a good laugh about it. And I told him a little bit about it. I said, maybe you should read it. Are you married? And he goes, no, I'm divorced. And then we had a bigger laugh. And then the other guy goes, I am too. And so then I told him where they could get the book. It's just like at a bookstore 2 blocks away. I was like, maybe you guys need the book. And one of them said, I think it's too late. And the other guy goes, it's never too late. And we had this great moment of just like acknowledging realness.
Right.
And that's why people laugh when you do that. Like, so you said tragedy is necessary before comedy, and I 100% agree with that. We are all trying to be the tragic hero who is perfect and flawless and noble. And yet what
Persecuted
happens to the tragic hero? What is history telling us?
Do what?
and persecuted, that they are that they are not doing anything wrong to anyone else, that all the wrong that is happening in their life is only what's being done to them.
You're right. You're right. You're right. You're right.
What is our English teacher telling us? The tragic hero always dies because
Right.
you cannot be, no matter how perfect you think you are, fate and fortune will get you. Life will bring you low. That's where the comedy hero starts, low.
Right.
I am a terrible human being, and that is the only way I can get to the truth, is admit that I am not perfect. And so I think we laugh because we are all desperately wanting to be the tragic hero when in fact, if we're lucky, we get to be comedy heroes.
Let me ask one more question before we wrap up. We've talked a lot about the church and we've said some hard things, obviously. And yet there's a church community in the book that really does become critical for you and really does come around you. Talk to me about that. Like, what role did community play? It struck me as funny, something you said earlier. You talked about how at the reading there were some people who were there who were from this church that you talk about early in the book where you didn't experience a lot of comfort. I'm a little surprised by that. I feel like you're pretty generous to that church, and particularly to that pastor. There's a story you tell about going to him a particularly dark moment where he just shows up and prays for you. And I felt like that was a really beautiful moment in the story. So I don't think you're unfair necessarily.
The pastor in the story that he goes to is Tayo. It's the same pastor that I asked to give me communion on the D-Lo.
That's funny.
It's the same dude.
To that community, certainly not dismissive of it. And yet there is a community that forms later in the book that becomes really critical. How would you describe like the role those friendships and those relationships in that church played in accompanying you through, you know, saving your marriage, staying married?
You know, I've heard a wise person say the opposite of addiction is community. And I could say that about pain. The opposite of pain is community. Another saying, pain shared is halved. You know, pain felt alone is doubled. And so our church community especially helped us sort of on two levels. On one level, it was just having people to tell what happened. Like, this happened. Having people to pray for us, knowing other people knew our story, and that if something happened, we could turn to them. You know, like there's a moment in the book where I needed to move my wife's car to a safe location where this man could not find her because we knew he would be looking. And I have all these people whose phone numbers are in my phone that I can say, hey, can I hide a car at your house so a man with a gun won't find my wife? And people who were fearless to say, yes, like, bring it to my house. I knew my wife, there was a point in the book where she couldn't be home, but she needed a place to be. And loving people who said, yes, we have a bed for your wife. We will feed her and give her a place to stay for however long, without judgment or scandal, without risk of scandal. Like, these people were not worried about how they looked to others. So there was that, just knowing that there was this community to help, to pray for us, who cared about us. And then on a more practical level, not that that wasn't practical, these were people who brought us food. These were people who brought beer and whiskey and casseroles and fried chicken to my front porch. And they said, here, you are going through hell. I think this chicken will help you. And they would, you know, bring me the chicken. They didn't want the scandal. They didn't care about the scandal of being involved with this real mess. It was such a mess. And they did not intrude. They would leave something on my front porch and send me a photo of it and said, I left you some food. I don't care if you don't like it. I think you need it. They didn't say, how can we help? That's like, if you want to punish the people you love, ask them how you can help. Because all you're doing is giving them one more decision to make. The best friends are the ones who say, I think you need a housekeeper. I'm going to send somebody to your house tomorrow to clean it. What is a good time for them to come? Or men who would, you know, I can remember more than one occasion, I'd be sitting in my driveway, just kind of staring at the sun, wondering where to go next and what to do next. And then somebody would just show up and start mowing my lawn. Somebody from my church didn't ask. They just showed up. And then they would see me sitting in the front yard or in the driveway, and the guy walks over and he goes, I was tired of looking at your ugly lawn. That was just his funny way of saying, I love you. I think I'm trying to help. And he did a terrible job of cutting it, by the way. You can only cut, only the owner knows how to really cut his own lawn.
That's right. That's right.
I told him, I said, man, I ain't going to stop you. Like, learning how to let other people help you.
Yeah.
Like, these other people forced themselves on me, even when I didn't want it. They gave me hugs when I didn't want them. These were people who like had Jedi powers to see that I was suffering. And even when people at our church didn't know, some of them knew, but not everybody, they would just come up and they would say, "Man, you look like you need a hug, man." Not in that weird, like contemporary Christian baby Jesus is a kitten and I love you and everybody's cool and hip. No, it was like, dude, something's going on with you and I'm not going to ask, but I'm going to just give you a hug. Like those kinds of people are there. They could see things. They were not trying to help me hide anything. And they helped in 1,000 ways. Church used to feel like work. This just feels like a community that also sometimes gets together like once a week to worship and sing and pray and hear the word. But church doesn't feel like the point. Church just feels like the place that we all come together at the same time. But we're in each other's lives every day, every week, helping, feeding pets, bringing food. When my wife left and I was a single parent with 3 children, these people said, "I'm going to come pick up your kids and we're going to go do something fun. Don't ask." They just came and picked up the girls. And I just wept. I wept because they weren't saying, "What can we do?" Or those poor kids, they did something. And so now, and that has changed me. I'm a very selfish person. It's hard for me to think about other people. I have struggled with that all my life, to even imagine what other people are thinking and feeling. And now when I see somebody suffering, I'll come up to them and I'll say, "Hey man, I love you. Like, are you okay? Is everything cool? Or let me take you to lunch, or let me cut your yard for you." There's a family a couple blocks away and we go to church together. And I just happened to find out in a conversation with the dad that they were really struggling and that things were not great at home. So I sent my middle child over there, who's a great babysitter, and I said, "You go over there and you get their kids and you walk them back on their bikes all the way to our house and don't ask questions. Just go get the kids and say, 'My dad said I'm going to come play with your kids for a while.'" And then we sent them food. Like, I don't know what was going on with them, but like, we're just loving each other. And something about that love like opens up places that are closed, places that we close because we want to protect. And so I'm just so grateful to our community and so grateful to be a part of it. The church is called Christ the King. It's an ARP church, a Presbyterian church, and it just particularized about a year and a half ago. It's a great group.
Well, Harrison Scott Key, it's an extraordinary book, and I'm so grateful you made time to join us here on the Bulletin this week. The book is How to Stay Married. And Harrison, where can people find you online? Are you on social media anywhere where people can?
Yeah, you can just
connect?
My full name is Harrison Scott Key, and you can just Google my name and find my website. It's harrisonscottkey.com. I'm on Instagram, Harrison Scott Key. I'm on Twitter. I think it's Harrison Key on Twitter, on Facebook. But I love to hear from readers, especially with a book like this. I love to hear how people are reacting to it, people at every level of life and age and marriage. I love to hear from readers their favorite lines and their least favorite lines, which they're not afraid to share. I love to hear all that. So please connect with me.
All right. Well, thank you again. And thanks to all of you for listening. We are taking off next week. And so there'll be no podcast on this.
Oh no, there'll be no Christianity Today podcast a week from now, a year ago. Oh no!
It is always funny to hear those little bits and pieces of like stuff that's only applicable for that particular time on videos that are sitting on the internet several years old at that point.
Yeah.
Well, McMo, you've got one reader. I've just got the book on Audible.
Get ready for a proper cry, mate. A proper cry indeed. It'll bring you down, I'll say, but it'll also lift you up.
Oh, and we've got the culprit in the hive mind.
Chad! Hello, mate.
Hello, mate.
Let's see. Share screen.
Let's see what you've been cooking.
Yeah, when is McMo the Don gonna put out a proper TLC Wave album?
McMo the Dawn. Oh, I didn't realize I hadn't shared yet. Oh, hey, Rod. Roderick Hare himself.
Wait, is that Roderick, intimacy crisis expert, conversation partner?
Might be. If you guys want to talk about something, I need to take a little potty break. If not, I can put up the, potty break branding or whatever.
We can chat. I was just gonna say that, and I don't know if anybody here or in the audience is gonna know what it's about, but Undertale, this is giving me like Frisk going to fight Asgore. Like that's the vibe I'm getting from this.
It's probably not as grimy as Tayo would have liked.
Oh, we're getting there.
The grime takes time. The grime takes time.
This is the trick, Alfred. You just have to keep telling him it sucks until it goes for a reason. negative feedback loop.
What's happening and make the right.
Well, especially with me not being able to see your face, it's real easy for you to just be dancing and enjoying it. And,
Exactly.
Still shit. I don't know what to tell you. Just yeah, no, it's absolutely garbage. I don't know what to tell you.
In your life, and you really want to do what's right, you want to know what's happening and make the right moves. What do I do about our home? What do I do about our children? How do I treat my wife? Do I burn all of our clothes in the yard? Do I take a baseball bat and go, beat this guy up? Do I move out? Do I go on a sex bender and start drinking and using? Like, I wanted to do all of those things because I didn't know what to do. It's so extreme. So, what do? Well, you look for wisdom. And this is anybody, Christians, non-Christians, no matter what you are. If you're trying to find real answers, not short-term solutions, if you're trying to divine real truth out of the situation and know what to do, you're going to in your life. And you really want to do what's right. You want to know what's happening and make the right moves. What do I do about our home? What do I do about our children? How do I treat my wife? Do I burn all of her clothes in the yard? Do I take a baseball bat and go, beat this guy up? Do I move out? Do I go on a sex bender and start drinking and using? Like, I wanted to do all of those things because I didn't know what to do. It's so extreme. So, what do? Well, you look for wisdom. And this is anybody, Christians, non-Christians, no matter what you are. If you're trying to find real answers, not short-term solutions. If you're trying to divine real truth out of the situation and know what to do, you're going to look for ultimate answers and ultimate wisdom. What that means is in your life. And you really want to do what's right. You want to know what's happening and make the right moves. What do I do about our home? What do I do about our children? How do I treat my wife? Do I burn all of her clothes in the yard? Do I take a baseball bat?
I'll never tell.
Do I move out? Do I go on a...
Yes, Rod, I am a member of the Shadow Cabal.
So, what do? Well, you look for wisdom.
You look for wisdom.
And this is anybody, Christians, non-Christians, no matter what you are. If you're trying to find real answers, not short-term solutions. If you're trying to divine real truth out of the situation and know what to do, you're going to look for ultimate answers and ultimate wisdom. What that means is ancient wisdom. Like, all right. In your life.
Yes, I am a member of the Shadow Cabal, although on Grimm's recent stream, he didn't play any of my brandings. He's been showing me a little less attention lately. It's been starting to hurt my feelings. I wonder if it's something I said or if
it's because you didn't show up to the Northwest jury. That's why.
I didn't show up to Northwestuary. I haven't given him enough fresh new brandings. The best branding I think I ever made, he hasn't played yet. And gosh darn it, it makes me sad. You know
Okay,
what?
I've still got questions about this Brandon, because is there like a playlist of all the Brandons that one can binge watch and vibe to? If not, let's
No.
get
I don't do the brandings as separate videos anymore. I just submit them into the Broken Clock Tower Discord
okay. The Broken Clock Tower
as
disc.
MP4s. I try to remember to put them in there as MP4s, and because I submit them to because I put them in Discord, they have to be under like 250 megabytes or something. But honestly, some of the branding has been. Wait, I got tagged in one. Did I like it? Oh yeah, I did. The last one in there. Okay. Yeah, the branding page has been kind of it
Slow.
hasn't been as lively. It's been kind of dead.
I've got a team of lurkers that want to get involved in the branding game.
Uh-oh. Here's the last one I did.
You and I can make a difference in our children's future. Overpopulation is linked to pollution, overcrowding, health problems, and poor living conditions. Too many children can mean economic and emotional hardship. Our population is growing at an alarming rate. In the next 30 seconds, 90 more people will fill the earth. We need to make a change. Planning our families can make a difference. Think about how many children you want to love and support. Respect friends in their decision to have 0, 1, or 2 kids. Adoption is another option. Let's make this a cleaner, healthier world for our kids. Please think about how many children you want to bring into this world.
Do you think that the powers that be realized the problems they were going to be causing by doing that? Because now we've got the opposite. It's like, no, please have kids, please.
No, they still don't want us to have kids. They just realize now that there might be some side effects to that. Or actually, it's not even the side effects that we're getting that the good faith people are telling us to have kids for was, I think, a part of the goal of the same people who put that out. Yeah, that was the whole point of that video, is because of how absolutely batshit insane it is to say, what was it that think of the, like, we want our kids to live happy, healthy lives, so don't have them.
Yep.
Like, what the hell are you talking about,
Yep.
brother?
We want our kids to live happy, healthy lives, so you don't have them.
Yeah, so you don't have kids, so our kids can be, our bloodline can continue. Yeah, it's just utterly evil. So
I mean, what's the number on the Georgia Guidestones?
those don't exist anymore.
No, I know they don't exist anymore. But what was it when they still did?
No, actually, they never existed.
Oh, they never existed. Completely down the memory hole. Okay.
And if they did exist, they were good, but they didn't have any numbers on them.
No, definitely not.
I don't actually know that much about the Georgia Guidestones, or like if they have what numbers were on them or anything.
I think it was 100,000. I got to pull it up real quick.
He never played this one either. I don't think. Maybe he has. See how small they are, though.
In the corner has been swamped with
This is the one I was thinking of.
Mind control.
Mind control. Mind control.
Savings throws per mind.
500 million total pop on the earth.
I understand you have respect for serious play. Yes, I have a ritual with my channel where, like reminding fish that they're in water. I remind people that there's a lot of mind control out there, even if you just consider advertising. Well,
This is how bad I have failed.
I give you a savings throw against the mind control I use against you. So A, you know I'm using it against you, and if it works, I get more points. And B, you get the chance to resist. You base your resistance on your choice, your will to survive, your social networks, your accumulated wisdom, or the power of your heart.
Mind control will continue in a moment.
Why Grim didn't want to use that, I have no idea. Maybe this would be a nice little reminder, Grim. I've got some hidden treasure in the Discord that you haven't been using, buddy. How am I ever going to get rich and famous if nobody sees the brandings I spend, 30 to 45 minutes on in my backyard during a smoke break at work?
If you're counting on somebody picking you up from seeing branding on Grim Grizz's stream, I have a bridge to sell you, friend.
If you don't think it could happen, then I don't need any bridge you're selling.
I mean, it could happen, but what is the probability of such things?
What's impossible for a man is possible with God.
So what you're saying is you'll pray for it, and it'll happen eventually?
I will pray. I will ask God for the desires of my heart, and he will give me what's best for me.
Is God a member of the Shadow Cabal then?
Can confirm.
Yep.
Okay. We don't have the audio, by the way.
The kid laughing in the background is very funny too, Ups. The idea of a logic or a science of relationship. And it's almost like the kids were like, you dummy. As soon as you scientificize it, you lose the magic.
We have no idea what you're talking about. Only you and Ups now.
Yeah, that was the video Ups DM'd me. But I do need to go potty. So, Tayo, Afriel, do you want to continue the combo, or shall I play the beat loop the beat for a second?
Loop the beat for a second.
All right.
Nami, in your life, and you really want to do what's right, you want to know what's happening and make the right moves. What do I do about our home? What do I do about our children? How do I treat my wife? Do I burn all of her clothes in the yard? Do I take a baseball bat and go, beat this guy up? Do I move out? Do I go on a sex bender and start drinking and using? I wanted to do all of those things because I didn't know what to do. It's so extreme. So, what do? Well, you look for wisdom. And this is anybody, Christians, non-Christians, no matter what you are. If you're trying to find real answers, not short-term solutions, if you're trying to find real truth out of this situation and what to do, you're going to look for ultimate answers and ultimate wisdom. What that means is in your life, and you really want to do what's right, you want to know what's happening and make the right moves. What do I do about our home? What do I do about our children? How do I treat my wife? Do I burn all of her clothes in the yard? Do I take a baseball bat and go, beat this guy up? Do I move out? Do I go on a sex bender and start drinking and using? I I wanted to do all of those things because I didn't know what to do. It's so extreme. So what do? Well, you look for wisdom. And this is anybody, Christians, non-Christians, no matter what you are. If you're trying to find real answers, not short-term solutions, if you're trying to divine real truth out of this situation and what to do, you're going to look for ultimate answers and ultimate wisdom. What that means is in your life, and you really want to do what's right, you want to know what's happening and make the right moves. What do I do about our home? What do I do about our children? How do I treat my wife? Do I burn all of her clothes in the yard? Do I take a baseball bat and go, beat this guy up? Do I move out? Do I go on a sex bender and start drinking and using? I wanted to do all of those things because I didn't know what to do. It's so extreme. So what do? Well, you look for wisdom. And this is anybody, Christians, non-Christians, no matter what you are. If you're trying to find real answers, not short-term solutions, if you're trying to divine real truth out of this situation and what to do, you're going to look for ultimate answers.
A little darker than I normally do, but hey, ain't nothing wrong with that.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually not darker than I normally do. It's just darker than I normally do on the stream. I think some of this is not showing up.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the comments, are not showing up or something. Because
on the YouTube stream part?
No, I was just looking in the wrong place.
There was one that you highlighted from Rodhair that I didn't see on the live chat.
I think maybe after that long and dark period, maybe there should be a lighter period. Maybe it should be light. Or maybe I just keep making some crazy, crazy sounds.
Don't die.
Yep. I do at some point today have to go pick up my wife from work. And then later this evening, I've got a Not Estuary with Chadrick. Yeah, and we're back at it.
I was just looking at the timer.
Do what?
I said I was just looking at the timer, how long the stream's been going for, and I was like, I should probably go and do some housework.
Yeah, you probably should, dude.
Well, I would encourage anybody else who wants to jump in from the chat to come in, keeping Mo company.
I can just make this beat, and nobody has to talk,
I know, but it's more fun when you have somebody to talk with, to to gaslight you into being a better producer, as Cassandra said.
Yes.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna follow Rod's example there.
Bye. Thanks for hanging.
Thanks for having me.
Bye, Rod. Thanks for hanging too. Oh wait. I need to record. I need to record the thing that Up sent. Do 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 do. Tayo, any other thoughts? Have you stepped away from the? He's leaving me out here all on my own.
In your life.
I see your corn. I did abandon you, but it was just to grab a beer. But luckily for my purposes, the track was tracked. So we're good. We're good. We're good. We're so good.
Well, I think I can set it up for you because I'm certain that if I do it, there is a mechanism that can do it. If I can manage to state that in a finite and unambiguous manner, then, well, I think I can set it up for you because I'm certain that if I do it, there is a mechanism that can do it. If I can manage to state that in a finite and unambiguous manner, then,
Uh-oh. Tayo,
well, I think I can set it up for you because I'm...
I don't know if I know this J.R. Henry, but I appreciate you stopping by, sir. I appreciate you wanting my White Air Force's opinions. I believe it's what's the official title now, Tayo? It's I don't remember. I should just look it up. But White Air Forces is the move. Yeah. What to say about it that hasn't already been said? I think it was a great introduction to Lecrae for many people. I think that it was the type of thing from Lecrae that may surprise some who have discounted him for his deconstruction and some of his quote unquote liberalism. But I think when it came out, we had a long discussion on it in the Discord, and I think that it kind of I guess I should say there's a part of me that kind of wishes he wouldn't have responded and just kind of left the mystique out there, because I think there is a little bit of a, I mean, he addresses it in the song, but the idea of kind of a clout chasey thing or a taking advantage of the moment, maybe a less negative way to put it. I don't know, Tayo. Do you have any other thoughts on the White Air Forces? I don't think Tayo's here anymore. He's muted himself in StreamYard, so I guess he's just kind of left me to opine. And I'm probably gonna have to pick up my wife soon from work. So, yeah, Cassandra, you missed that one. That would have been 2 weeks ago, I think, or like, yeah, Thursday of last week. Maybe we were just talking about the mention. Maybe we didn't talk that much about the. Well, I hope that that gave you a little bit of my White Forces reaction. I thought the beat was really well done. I follow the producer on Instagram, but I don't remember his name.
Well, I think I can set it up for you because I'm certain that if I do it, there is a mechanism that can do it. If I can manage to state that in a finite and unambiguous manner, then, well, I think I can set it up for you because I'm certain that if I do it, there is a mechanism that can do it. If I can manage to state that in a finite and unambiguous manner, then I think it can be done. And I see no reason why we can't develop a logical relation in time to come. Granted, it's defective at the present time. Well, I think I can set it up for you because I'm certain that if I do it, there is a mechanism that can do it. If I can manage to state that in a finite and unambiguous manner, then I think it can be done. And I see no reason why we can't develop a lot.
to know what's happening and make the right moves? What do I do about our home? What do I do about our children? How do I treat my wife? Do I burn all of her clothes in the yard? Do I take a baseball bat and go, beat this guy up? Do I move out? Do I go on a sex bender and start drinking and using? I wanted to do all of those things because I didn't know what to do. It's so extreme. So, what do? Well, you look for wisdom.
J.R. Henry giving us. Now you want my D1 reaction. It's a very New Orleans beat. I've never been the hugest D1. Like D1 is not in my top 5 CHH or whatever, even though I do like D1. His was certainly the kind of voice in the wilderness critiquing the culture side of the argument that I think yeah, it's very interesting. I mean, I was watching an interview with D1 earlier. It's also funny because D1 and Lecrae had a little bit of a disagreement a while back because Lecrae was talking about righteous and ratchet, and the fact the idea of his wife being like a city girl and a church girl kind of a thing. And D1 was like, no, these two things are not the same. They're, you can't be both. You got to be, you got to live a life of holiness, kind of a thing. But yeah, it's like, I think the way I felt like I wish Lecrae hadn't released something, I think I felt like even more like maybe D1 shouldn't have. But I'm glad that they both did. If anything, because it'll get people to listen to the rest of their music. And I do think it's very cool for both of them to kind of be getting some, time in the spotlight. I think that's cool and good for. Well, certainly not good for them, but it might be good for the gospel in some way or something, But yeah, it's a very cool time to be a enjoyer of hip hop. And I probably should have bounce this while I was just talking, but I'm basically going to bounce this and then put it in the audio, like the music on StreamYard, and then basically play it and then basically leave. Because I got to go pick up my wife, and then I think we might have some errands to run. And then I've got to get back here for the Not Estuary, which is tonight. Oh, and Nail's back streaming on Grail Country. I don't know when that started, but I probably should have not double streamed on top of them. So I will upload this, and then we will play it, and then we will get out of here. Let's see. Maybe I should go over to their channel and stream that. Oh no, he's been going for an hour. I should have signed off here a long time ago. Sorry, Grail Country and Nate. It's okay. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Everybody go over to Grail Country. The three of you that are left. That includes you, JR, Henry. I don't know who you are, JR Henry, but I'm glad you came today. Sorry, I don't recognize the name. Oh, Parlato. I see you on the Go Country stream, brother. What are you doing? Well, Sherry's talking about this stuff, Parlato. You're getting into you're just stream skipping. All right. Bye, y'all. Bye, y'all. Bye, y'all. Bye, y'all. Bye, y'all.
In your life, and you really want to do what's right, you want to know what's happening and make the right moves. What do I do about our home? What do I do about our children? How do I treat my wife? Do I burn all of her clothes in the yard? Do I take a baseball bat and go, beat this guy up? Do I move out? Do I go on a sex bender and start drinking and using? I wanted to do all of those things because I didn't know what to do. It's so extreme. So, what do? Well, you look for wisdom. And this is anybody, Christians, non-Christians, no matter what you are. If you're trying to find real answers, not short-term solutions, if you're trying to divine real truth out of this situation and know what to do, you're going to look for ultimate answers and ultimate wisdom. What that means is
I could set it up for you, because I'm certain that if I do it, there is a mechanism that can do it. If I can manage to state that in a finite and unambiguous manner, then I think it can be done. And I see no reason why we can't develop a logical relation from time to come. Granted, it's defective at the present time. Well, I think I could set it up for you, because I'm certain that if I do it, there is a mechanism that can do it. If I can manage to state that in a finite and unambiguous manner, then I think it can be done. And I see no reason why we can't develop a logical relation from time to come. Granted, it's defective at the present time.